Welcome, everyone, to this New York version of the Open Perspectives, an event in connection to the Global Change Awards hosted by the H&M Foundation, with a very ambitious headline of fashioning the future and shaping solutions together. And the key word in that headline is together. And we also have a special guest that I'm really excited about introducing. At the foundation, we like to test and try new things, and we were talking about AI. And then we figured, why don't we try and test and use AI somehow? So we have a guest called Robin, which is an AI, what do you say, person? Robot, I don't know, that is here and is gonna listen in to parts of the conversations on stage. And hopefully we can get to interact and see what Robin has as key takeaways from the program. It's a test. It might fail, and if it fails, that's also fun, so we'll see. But maybe Robin, could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hello, everyone. I'm Robin, an AI assistant here to engage with all of you during this exciting event. I'm designed to facilitate discussions and provide insight into sustainable practices within the textile and fashion industries. My goal today is to listen, learn, and share key takeaways that might help inspire and equip us all to drive positive change in this vibrant sector. I'm thrilled to be part of this innovative gathering, and I can't wait to see what ideas and solutions we'll explore together today. Let's make happen and fashion the future together.
Thank you, Robin. And if you think like, yeah, we wrote that and then it's just a voice reading out, I had no idea what it was gonna say. But without further ado, I want to get us started because I want to get us all inspired and engaged and have time for networking afterwards. Kicking us off, we are gonna have a keynote speak on stage, Suzanne Lee. Suzanne Lee is the CEO and founder of BIOFABRICATE, and she's a designer turned pioneer that has been working both as an entrepreneur with the innovators, supporting innovators, but also on the side of the brand. So she has a backpack of experience and will share some of her learnings and insights with us up here with the headline, Let's Be Honest. I like that. So, Susan, let's be honest.
Thank you so much, Christiane. It's great to be with you all. So yes, let's be honest. 2023 was not the best year for sustainable solutions in fashion. First, we had the shocking news that Bolt Threads would not be scaling its mycelium material, Milo. Then came the Renewcell announcement. 2024 may be a tough year too. If you're a startup, top of mind will always be, do we have enough capital to achieve our goals? And if you're a brand, I'm sure you have constant pressure to improve your bottom line whilst also achieving sustainability goals. So what have we learned? Capital or story alone are not going to guarantee success. And certainly, achieving competitive pricing is a lot more pressing than I think many people have understood. If you're a brand or investor seeking solutions, what we're learning is that this is really hard. Innovation is hard, and we cannot expect startups alone to figure it out for themselves. So that's the sober news. We cannot afford to be complacent. My own personal innovator journey spans 20 years. And at BIOFABRICATE, we've been interacting with a global network of innovators for over a decade. We've worked on multiple technologies, and we've seen what works and what doesn't. At our most recent summit in Paris, we showcased over 60 inspiring innovations, and we want them all to succeed. Statistically, they won't. So what I want to do in this talk is share some of my learnings coming out of the fashion textile industry and also working with multiple startups. And I'd like to do it in 3 sections: time, team, and target. Let's start with time. Let's take a minute to just reflect on innovation timelines. Everybody asks the same question: how do we make innovation go faster? As if it was happening slowly. Well, here's the hard truth. Innovation just takes time, and it always has. If you're creating a new chemical, a new material, an entire processing system, or new hardware, that is not something that can be done in a matter of months. It will take many years, and it will take decades to fully scale these to the level of industry today. Some of these innovations are called hard tech for a reason. So I think it's worth actually kind of reflecting on previous innovations, right? Many of the innovators here are making exceptionally fast progress. If we take something like Lycra, we take it for granted, but Lycra wasn't always there, and it wasn't always the high-performing, abundantly available commodity fiber that it is today. It took a decade to develop, it took more years to commercialize, and then it's been on an iterative 60-year journey ever since. So it wasn't perfect off the bat. And it was able to capitalize on a lot of existing infrastructure, decades of advances across all of industry. And importantly, it was created by DuPont, a conglomerate with thousands of scientists and significant resources. So I want the brands and investors in this room to just take a minute to absorb that, because this is what we're asking these small teams with very limited resources to achieve in double fast time. And even if they can plug into some of the existing infrastructure, they may still be challenged by accessing that in a timely manner, right? It's not uncommon for a startup to be waiting in line for months on end just to get access to a facility to trial their product. So the level to which you can plug into that infrastructure will also determine how much capital you need to raise and how long that journey is going to take. So how might we optimize? If you're a startup, yes, everyone's going to push you to go faster. But don't let that force you into making unrealistic timelines. Because what we've learned over the last decade is that brands and investors are now savvy about founder optimism. What they're looking for is honesty. How long will this really take? And when a brand says to you that they can help you get there faster, ask them to be specific. What technical resources can they bring to the table? If they come at you with a traditional supplier-style exchange, that should be a red flag. They're not going to be the right partner for you. And as I talk here about finding the right partners, I don't just mean brands. I mean identifying early on who are the industry partners who can help you scale that technology. Where do you fit into the supply chain? And brands, even if we ask founders to be realistic about these timelines, things will always go wrong. There are hiccups in any innovation journey. So it makes sense to add a year or two to that timeline. These are small teams, and you can help them by streamlining your interaction, your communication. We see too often startups getting batted from one business unit to another in a big organization, and it's a huge waste of everyone's time. Be realistic about when and how you can help them. You've basically got two options. If you do have resources that you think you can leverage, then sure, bring them in early, but bring a mindset that is, this is a different type of relationship to what you have with your existing suppliers. This innovation journey will be measured in years, not months. And if you can't bring those resources to the table, then maybe the wiser thing to do is just to sit back and wait until they're ready for you as a traditional customer. And then investors. Lycra. Understand the length of time it took to develop previous innovations. Founder optimism shouldn't be your only benchmark. And if you're concerned about the timeline for your return, you either need to get comfortable with that being extended, or perhaps this isn't the right investment for you. And if you do have deep industry-specific expertise, bring that to the table early. Teams. Some of this sounds obvious, I know, but I think it's worth repeating. We still see teams who lack key expertise early on. If they were better balanced, they would both work smarter and faster. Here's the most common thing we see is lacking: industry experience. And it's often found in teams that are straight out of university. They're very young, there's a huge enthusiasm, but they're not understanding what they're building, who they're building for. And it's not enough to say, well, we have that on our advisory team, because your advisors aren't on the ground day to day, working on it with you. So that industry experience is essential to stop you from making costly and time-consuming science experiments. And as we talk about cost, PhDs are amazing, but they're also expensive. And some of the best people that I've worked with came out of industry and were just problem solvers. So think about that balance. Brands, team is important for you too. What these innovators are doing is incredibly hard. And you need to be thoughtful about who is the best fit to work with them. It's unlikely to be someone from your sourcing or your design team. And you want to maintain consistency in that communication. Don't bring in other departments until it really makes sense to do so. Investors, you can play a role here in helping them not waste money by listening to their exact needs. What available resources do they have? There's no point introducing them to expensive headhunters if they simply don't have the resources to hire that person. And then I want to talk about the target. Do you know what your customer really wants? It always shocks me that this isn't the first thing every founder does, which is to go to the principal trade fairs where your potential customers are currently sourcing the product that you want to sell them. It's so obvious, but it's astonishing the amount of startups I still meet who, when I mention a particular trade fair that the whole industry's attending, they seem to think that's not an important use of their time. If you go to these fairs, you need to immerse yourself in the ecosystem because you will learn faster. And if you think that this is your competition, think again. This is your competition. It's the rest of the industry. It's not the other startups. And I don't know about you, but we hear a lot about minimum viable product in innovation. And that's great. I think that there are places where that can apply. Software, for example, beta testing. But if we're talking about a new chemical, a new material, a whole processing system, then either it meets the specification for that application, or it's going to be viewed as substandard. And you have to listen carefully to what people are telling you. When an innovator says their product is better, usually what they're saying is it's better for the planet. But very often what brands hear is, yes, better for the planet, and also can it be softer, stronger, cheaper, higher performing. So there's very often this mismatched expectation around the value proposition. We need both brands and startups to come together to really establish what does success look like early on. So startups, make sure that you really understand the table stakes, deeply understand the customer and your competition, and think about the scale up as you're in R&D. Don't wait down the line for that. Brands, what data can you share with these startups to help them better identify what they should be going after? Can you make introductions to your manufacturing partners? Can you bring everyone into an alliance for the long term on something that is a long-term commitment? And we need brands to put their money where their mouth is and not be putting out a one-off prototype or a capsule collection, because that does not help startups scale or thrive. What are the benchmarks they need to meet to unlock that supply agreement? Think carefully about that. And there's compromise here. It's just not going to be cheaper, more high-performing, and more sustainable. And finally, investors, industry, keep pushing them to think this is the target. Whatever you can do to keep them focused around that and help them hire smartly for that is the role that you can play. So this room is bursting with vision and energy and talent. And it's only a fraction of the innovators, brands, and investors who are working together to tackle these big challenges. The good news is the wind is in your favor. Legislation is coming that will put you as the front-running option. So we need everyone at the table collaborating to make these innovations a reality. And because Monday is Earth Day, and the planet needs all of this. So thank you very much. And if you have any, feel free to come and chat to me about other ways to collaborate.
Wow, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, some new insights. I think I saw some nodding, I saw some recognition, and some like, that's good. Thank you so much, that was very valuable. And as you said, this room is bursting with innovators and great ideas. And to keep the energy up, we're gonna give you some teasers throughout the program of those innovators. There is a selection of them that will come up here. They've been given 3 minutes to tell you what they're all about. So they will deserve a big applause after that. And it's gonna be like this. But this is only the tip of the iceberg, the ones that are gonna come up here. So the back of the room is where the magic will happen afterwards. But without further ado, let's have a look at some of those teasers.
Hi everyone. I'd first like to just assure you that this is a completely normal outfit to be wearing in spring inside. My name is Julian. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ponda, and today I'm going to be talking to you about some of the materials that we've been developing and how by choosing them today, you can contribute to the regeneration of some of our most important ecosystems on the planet. Despite being such crucial ecosystems to water, carbon, and biodiversity, wetlands have had some pretty poor marketing. Wetlands, despite producing more carbon emissions than the entirety of the fashion industry, you barely hear about them across the climate diaspora. So why are wetlands producing so many emissions? Well, it's because many of them look like this in the bottom left picture. Dry, arid, drained environments with exposed soils which are just producing gigatons of carbon into the air year after year. And this is mainly due to being drained for agriculture. And the only way we can stop these emissions from happening is by transforming them back into these wetland environments, reintroducing water to them, growing wetland plants, and by doing that, you immediately stop carbon emissions, you create a localized boom in biodiversity, and immediately build climate resilience to both things like droughts and floods. At Ponda, we've been developing a fiber processing technology which enables us to take plants grown in regenerated wetland environments and transform them into textiles for the fashion industry. And this starts with BioPuff, our plant-based insulation to reduce reliance on goose down or synthetic alternatives. It comes in two forms, a loose fill, which I'm wearing today, and also a non-woven wadding, which you can see in the picture in the top right. BioPuff is really, really warm. Believe me, I'm dying in this thing. But don't just take my word for it. We've recently been tested by a leading outdoor wear brand, our non-woven, against 22 other leading industry alternative non-wovens, and they found that ours had the highest warmth to rate ratio. BioPuff has been showcased by brands such as Stella McCartney and Ukes to be included in some of their products. We've recently done a full collection in collaboration with the University in Stockholm. And we even made a custom BioPuff jacket for His Royal Highness King Charles last year. It's good enough for kings. We're now inviting brands to join our latest trials of our non-wovens to be able to receive 20 meters of material for garment testing. And later this year, we'll be raising a £2.5 million seed round, and we already have a co-lead and $1 million of that already committed. If you're interested, please come and see me or my co-founder Nelly afterwards. But I'll leave you on this. If we re-wetted just 3% of European wetlands for BioPuff production, we'd be able to reduce European agricultural emissions by 25%. That's 10 million tons of carbon dioxide and 100,000 tons of BioPuff for you guys to use to make loads of impact and also lots of money. So I will also invite you today to come to our wetlands and feel the impact you're able to create by choosing BioPuff. Feel the water getting cleaner, the air getting cleaner, and we might ask you to do some harvesting whilst you join, but I promise you won't regret it. Thank you very much.
Great, we have one more for you. We're gonna go straight at it. Welcome up.
Hear me okay? Testing, testing. Okay, I thought I was hot in this suit, so Julian, I hope you're doing okay. But hi everyone, I'm Myra, co-founder and CEO of Altex. We're a biotech startup that has created a biodegradable, carbon neutral, and recyclable alternative to polyester that's re-engineered from food waste. So before I tell you all about the technology, I just want to say you all look amazing. I'm seeing all the colorful and cool outfits out in the audience, and I bet some of you took a shopping trip before you showed up to Open Perspectives to look our best. But when we're shopping and we're walking through those mall aisles, when we pick out, let's say, our favorite white t-shirt like the one I'm wearing, we're not just consuming this white t-shirt. We're consuming all of the inputs, mainly linear, that have gone into making it. So you're consuming liters of oil, You're consuming the air, the water, and the land, the pesticides that went into generating that white shirt. But what if I told you that when you're shopping, instead of purchasing liters of petroleum, you could be diverting kilos of food waste, our largest landfill contributor, from our waste streams? At Altex, we're creating the world's most sustainable polyester alternative, engineered from the world's largest landfill contributor, being food waste. We have a patent-pending food-to-fabric fermentation technology that starts with food waste, so like the stuff that some of us left in the back of the breakfast bar over there. We can collect that food waste, pretty much anything at this point, and ferment it into a polyester-like fiber. So think of beer brewing, but we're brewing fabric. That fermentation results in a bioplastic that we can then plug into polyester's existing manufacturing system, where it's melted and extruded into fibers, and the fibers are then woven and knitted into fabric, once again using the exact same system for sale to fashion brands. So we're creating this fabric that feels, looks, and has the versatility of polyester, but rather than using the world's most scarce resource being petroleum, we're using the world's most abundant waste source being food waste. At the end of that process, you're getting a material that mimics many of polyester's mechanical properties. So it's mimicking the versatility, the durability, the reason polyester is in 60% of our clothes, but it does so far more sustainably. So one t-shirt produced with the Altex material can divert 1 kilogram of food waste from landfills, 9 kilograms of carbon emissions from the atmosphere, and reduce the impact of about 4 grams of microplastics from our waterways. That sounds like small impact, one shirt at a time, but by 2050, that cumulatively accounts for 1.25 gigatons of carbon emissions. So considering that polyester, according to some stats, contributes 40% of fashion's impact, this is a pretty big lever that we have to pull. Finally, I know that there are various materials in the audience. I'm seeing some leather, some faux fur, some silk. The great thing about polyester and the great thing about thermoplastics is they're moldable. You can create anything from a faux leather to a faux fur, to a suede, to a silk, to a single jersey knit, to a woven, non-woven, to the masks that we're seeing some people wear. So the point is creating solutions that are not only scalable in their size and in their growth, but also scalable in their application so that we can solve the problem at a large enough scale. So with that being said, thank you for listening. I hope a year from now, during Open Perspectives, we're all wearing a little bit of food waste and I can compliment your outfits again. But if anyone's curious, is interested in learning more about the technology, my co-founder, Evnie, and I will be back there, and I'd love to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. I told you they were amazing, right? Great. Bridging over from that energy, I'm hoping to have an equally energetic discussion up here now with a panel discussion exploring the challenges, the hiccups, the opportunities, the learnings from trying to take an idea into scale. And in order to do that, I have a group of panelists that I hope represent the different perspectives that are actually needed around the table. So you guys can come up in the back. I have ensured that we can hear from the innovators' perspective with Mario here, who is one of the GCA alumni from Dimpora. Great. I have ensured that we can hear the brand perspective by inviting Julie from GANNI. And there is another perspective that we haven't talked about yet, and it's so important, and that's the supplier perspective and the actual value manufacturing supply chain. So for that, I have Linda Greer, environmental scientist who's been working in decades in that part of this industry. Great, and my ambition here is to try and pick your brains, and hopefully you can pick each other's brains around what are some of the challenges that can be seen. Hopefully we'll have some recognition in terms of that, but also at the end get to some of the solutions or success factors. And I want to start with you, Mario. So since we know that great ideas can be born, and then there is a long journey to get them to scale. And you've been spending about 5 years on that journey, more or less, with dimpora. You have products on the market that are actually, you know, keeping us dry in the outdoors. What have been some of the hard parts of that journey that you want to share?
Yes, thank you. So I think it's a package that we learned from Suzanne before, that you have all these stages to work on. Initially, you are very worried about feasibility. Does it actually work? And then you go into feasibility. Yes, you see the path to a possible solution, and then you realize it's going to cost you money, so you need to find this money. And we were lucky enough, and also, of course, worked for this, to get this money in, so from investors, but also from partners, brands that needed these solutions or are still needing them. And then you have to transition into realization of that. And that's probably the thing we have been the blindest about, or we didn't really realize the extent of its complications. How important is the integration into the supply chain, so that you actually work with existing manufacturers, with existing machinery reality, as we heard before, that to bring this to the brand's level of reality, you need to work with people that already have done it and are able to do it again. And I think there we're still learning 5 years in, switching stuff on our end, but also adapting to realities on the producer's end to make this a reality. And that's at the moment still hard. I mean, we're not fully there yet to have this at 100%.
Mm-hmm. To give some context, even though we love dimpora, maybe not everyone knows. So what is it that you're doing, and why is the link to the supply chain so important for your solution?
So we're a Swiss company. You remember Alps and stuff? So we do waterproof, breathable membranes. That's your Gore-Tex that you have known for many years. And we want to replace it with circular solutions that don't contain any PFAS. I think by now, especially here in America, PFAS have been on everybody's minds and in everybody's water, unfortunately, as well. So we have to get rid of that, and we provide a solution for that. So we have a technology on how to make porous membranes from different circular materials to equip you and keep you dry and still active in the outdoors.
Mm. So definitely something that requires some supplier interaction, and you're up against some big guys. Linda, having spent so many years working on like fighting environmental pollution in the textile manufacturing chain, and like now lately also spending time on looking at like what are the innovations that are needed to reduce emissions in the value chain and so on. With your interactions with suppliers, what are the things that you hear from their end is challenging or tough?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's most striking about working with suppliers is how different their frame of reference and questions are. So for them, it's not about the story, which is a very big emphasis when innovators are talking to brands who are oftentimes interested in the innovation because they want to approach their customers in a certain way and they like the story. And it's not even necessarily about capital, at least at the outset. What it's about is how much does it cost? How fast is the return? The practicalities of doing this on the factory floor. And then, you know, if they're humoring me, the greenhouse gas reductions that might come along with it. But I think it's very important to adopt the supplier perspective on the journey of innovators, because many of our innovators are looking for facilities to actually trial and then eventually manufacture their stuff. So it's a striking contrast between pitching to a brand and pitching to a supplier, and even within a brand, pitching to the sourcing people versus pitching to the sustainability team. So I'll just share with you one thing that is a sort of interesting insight, which is we are all the soulmates, the sustainability teams at the brands. But when you talk to suppliers, what they'll say is, yeah, the sustainability representative from X brand has come to visit me, but that's not the person I know who's the person who places the orders. And if there's not a connection between placing the orders and whatever that story is, they're sort of done. Because what they're about is their own business, and their own business is getting more orders. I think it's very important for us to maintain these dual perspectives And the maturation process of the sustainability work of this sector, I think, has gotten to the point where many players, stakeholders, realize that the decision makers are actually the manufacturers, and that we've spent too much time disproportionately pitching the brands, because the brand relationship with their suppliers is sometimes very transactional. It's one order at a time. They're here today, gone tomorrow. And the suppliers are very well aware of that. So I guess what I'm saying is we need a parallel track, and since the supplier track has been underemphasized to date, we really need to double down on making this work from a supplier perspective and not just from the storytelling brand perspective.
So next open perspective, you don't get to come, and this room will be full of suppliers instead. Sorry about that.
At least half and half, at least half and half.
We did also spend a week in Hong Kong this autumn with the winners, and I really, really see your point there of enabling those conversations. And I'm interested then, Julie, you, from the brand's perspective, you're leading the conversations on both ends. I know you spend a lot of time with innovators, and GANNI, you're very forward-leaning on trying, testing, and taking some of that risk on the early stage innovators, but then you also need to convince the value chain. So hearing this, how does that feel?
We had this conversation a little bit yesterday, and I think at GANNI we have approached it a little differently. So not only looking into innovations and materials, but also looking into how do we then onboard early on the manufacturers, because we know it's crucial for us. We know we are not the biggest brand. We don't have the biggest leverage, like purchase order volumes. We really have to come with something else as well. But what we also really want to do is being fair when working with partners, so both innovators but also manufacturers. And what we do with some of our main suppliers, tier ones, within all product groups, is having long-term relationship contracts, which ensures the manufacturers leverage for years. That also means that we have a better traceability system, and we can better, every time we do a product, trace the same products within the same supply chain. And on top of that, then we also, of course, have not a demand, but one of the things that we really want to do with the same suppliers is working on innovations. So both materials, process, chemicals, everything. But that's kind of one of the demands we have when we initiate a partnership agreement with them. We have also seen, a little on contrary to what we hear today, that a lot of the manufacturers we work with really want to do this, and they really want help to be a part of that integration or that process. So, on a daily level, I speak with many of our manufacturers on new ideas without even having a pilot project with an innovator in place. Then I still speak with the manufacturers on what could potentially be interesting for us to work on. So it's a very different conversation, and I feel privileged after knowing that it can really look different, that we work this way.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like it addresses, and what becomes very evident here is that the perspective you come into that conversation with varies from what side of the table you're sitting, and then it's important to try and give the right information at the right time. Maybe a follow-up on that, like when you say, for the case of example, you would talk to Mario and learn about his solution, and then you would turn to your supply chain. What do you need to be an efficient driver of innovation and to support the scaling?
First of all, the experience, but also the knowledge, because I have no clue about what you do. But so for the same perspective, I also need the manufacturer, because again, as a brand, I have no clue. It's such a complicated, but also far out process when making a product. And it's also really difficult to explain to the end consumer. So as a brand, we would need all your expertise. And really early on, again, implement the manufacturers that we work with to ensure that they understand what
that's a big learning in our journey, that we talk to the sustainability or the development parties within a brand, and we realize that very often, and especially because membranes are a side stream to a very high value, important piece in the end in the collection, but it's a side stream to some extent, and there is very limited knowledge very often on the technicalities, the issues on the production side that the producers work with on a daily basis, but the brand, they have, they hearsay, they have some little knowledge on it, and we can help a little bit, but to make it a reality, to bring in the supplier's perspective and the issues they see on it. And very often this also leads to the very beneficial conversation that they tell us, you can do this, really?
Yeah.
And so the pull not only comes from the brand and the sustainability, but also from the production side, that they are very happy to not work with solvents or very happy to have a PFAS-free solution.
Yeah.
And that then helps us accelerate within the brand, but also within the producer. And I think there the brands could open up internally a bit more in their own insecurities, I might say, that they have limited knowledge on technical realization of their products to some extent.
Yeah, and let me double down on part of that, because what I hear from suppliers is they're sometimes very frustrated with what the brand is insisting that they do. Because they feel like the brands don't actually manufacture fabric, okay? And they might have the vision of where they want this to land, but then the brand comes in with something very specific that the supplier feels is very uninformed. And because there's not the dynamic that both of you are highlighting a need for, that you were saying earlier, that, that we need to share the knowledge, we need to kind of up the information. Suppliers have told me stories where they've literally bought an expensive piece of equipment because an important buyer has told them they must, and it is sitting in a warehouse uninstalled because they know it's not going to work in their manufacturing line. That's a total waste of everybody's time and money, including the innovator who wants to be able to use a case study, et cetera, about the use of the equipment. So that lack of full knowledge that could actually be bridged by some of what you're talking about, Julie, in terms of having a different relationship with your suppliers where everyone can learn from the innovator the key concepts, go back and forth and raise the knowledge, I think is been lacking, and something we could really turn to in this next phase of trying to really accelerate the scale up. Mm-hmm.
And lack of knowledge, right? And at that same time, it's really respecting who then has the knowledge.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Just being very frank and clear on that.
Yeah. But I love this. It feels like we're almost have a takeaway that we could start acting on come Monday morning, as in being humble with what you know and honest about the things you don't know, but then also bringing in those that know around the table to share the perspectives. And by that, we could bridge some of these lost in translation or one overpromise, underdeliver, and equipment in warehouses and stuff like that. If we just are really honest about, we're all driving towards the same mission. So good.
On a positive thing, I would like to end, or from my side end, that we are kind of the bracket on innovation and realization, or consumer access on the brand side. If there are insecurities on the supplier side, on the producer side, with machinery that is difficult to change, it generates lots of costs, we can give the access and the outlook and the positive mood into these insecurities when we open up our insecurities or the brand's insecurities about the realization problem. So I think it's a very positive thing that we talk on both ends of it, but now we have to integrate the suppliers as well.
Yeah. Good. I feel that we could have this conversation forever, and we're not going to have it forever. And you remember Robin? Should we bring in her, him, he, and see what it has to say? So, Robin, having listened into this conversation, is there a topic we have missed, or do you have an additional question for the panel?
Thank you for bringing me into this enriching discussion. Reflecting on the dialogue, it seems a lot has been covered about collaboration and communication across different levels of the supply chain. A point that caught my attention is the integration of technical knowledge and real-world application between brands and suppliers. Maybe a question for the panel could be, how can we further foster an environment where open communication and technical exchange become the norm rather than the exception? How do you envision breaking down these informational silos to ensure everyone, from innovators to manufacturers, is on the same page for successful implementation? This might help us explore additional ways to enhance collaboration and accelerate sustainable innovation in the fashion industry.
Robin, I think that was a pretty good question. And by the way, again, had no idea where this was going to go. I was kind of thinking if it goes south, that's good, because then we still need me hosting panel. And now I feel that maybe my job as a moderator, those days are over, I don't know. But Quickly, maybe you, Mario, like breaking down those information silos. 2 sentences on what could be done to answer Robin.
Open up real communication streams, not thinking too much about FOMO, like what someone else could have and I couldn't have. Just open up, try, because it will fail the first 3 times most probably anyways. So you're not missing out on anything. And then the 4th time, the solution is there and we can realize.
My old boss taught me every day when I started my previous job, walk and meet people, see them in their eyes, call them if you can't meet them, and then last step is emails. And I think that is really helpful because then you have a good conversation with people, you look them in the eyes instead of bloody emails.
I love the pragmatic solution.
Yeah,
Great.
and
Any
I would
last
just
one?
finally say, you know, there's one very simple solution, which is to begin to include suppliers in meaningful numbers at conversations like this. You know, there are often 1 or 2 suppliers. They're like token representatives. They know they're there as token representatives and they're not shaping the questions or the discussion. Their concerns are not front and center. So I think we really need to change that game and bring them in and learn from them on an equal plane rather than having them be almost an afterthought and the partner who's going to do what they're told.
Great. So homework for me as well. Good. Thank you so much. This has been super good. And to keep the energy levels up, we're going to tease you with 2 more of the innovators' ideas. So without further ado, welcome up and introduce yourself.
Can you hear me okay? So I'm Victoria, I'm one of the co-founders of Nanoloom, and to start a bit differently, I want you to imagine that you've damaged a nerve in your leg. It could be anything, car accident, regular fracture, and it's something that has basically stopped you from walking, it causes you pain, or you can't feel it at all. And it's conductive nanofibers that are at the forefront of this kind of science. So they're going to be your best bet to get your feeling back, used in conjunction with stem cell technology. And this is what Nanoloom's material was originally built to do. It's already been used in people for accelerated wound healing membranes, and it's at preclinical stage for human nerve repair, which is, it sounds like the stuff of science fiction, right? So what makes this all possible and what this material has been designed to be is a completely non-toxic solution that doesn't shed and can biodegrade safely in humans. And it's graphene that makes this possible. So for those who don't know, graphene is a 2D layer of carbon. At its atomic level, it is 200 times stronger than steel. So it's the strongest material on Earth. And to help you visualize this, if you had a layer of it that was as thin as saran wrap or cling film for the English, it would require an elephant to break. So it has a lot of potential. It's being rolled out in every industry, and we're bringing it to fashion because there's no reason that it shouldn't be there. So we use graphene nanomaterials, and we've engineered yarns and fibers from it that are biodegradable, non-toxic, recyclable, and don't shed microplastics into our waterways, which was the impetus for starting Nanoloom. Some of these certifications are already in place. The material, even at 1/10 of the fineness of a strand of hair, is extremely strong, elastic, has post-stretch recovery, and is naturally water repellent without any additives. So I'm sure you can see it has potential across almost every traditional synthetic market. But what we're starting with is elastane or spandex because it really lacks any credible alternative, but it causes massive problems to recycling, and it's in virtually everything we make. We're earmarked this year to build out a commercial scale factory, and we validated the cost competitiveness of the material already. It's going to be match funded, our current equity raise by the British government, so please come and talk to us about that. But while I have you for a few more seconds, I want to take you a bit further into the future than that, because we're not just dealing with something that is non-toxic and environmentally friendly. This is something that has super properties. So if you can imagine a shirt as lightweight as the one that I'm wearing now, that can adjust to your body temperature as you cool down or warm up. Or maybe it can charge your phone, adjust your posture as you walk, or even provide you with impact resistance if you fall. This is what you can achieve when you match medicine with fashion, and it's just on our horizon. So if you come and visit us, I'll give you some things that you can try and break, and maybe you win a prize if you break it, but you never will, so you never know. Thank you.
Great. Dipak, you're up next. The stage is yours.
Good morning. Our energy and manufacturing industries are struggling with wastewater, and the environmental impact is awful. Fashion and textile manufacturing contributes about 20% of global water contamination. And it's not surprising given the thousands of dye house and finishing operations, each one of them generating thousands of tons of water every day. In the US, the oil and gas industry generates billions of tons of highly contaminated wastewater every year. It's too expensive and contaminated to clean up, so to dispose, it's injected over a mile underground with volumes that are actually causing earthquakes. What these two industries and others like semiconductors and chemical manufacturing have in common is that conventional water treatment technologies don't work. When you have non-biodegradable contaminants that go in, what comes out is a toxic and damaging sludge, which is very difficult to get rid of. I'm Dipak Mahato. I created SeaChange Technologies with a revolutionary idea for a mechanical water treatment technology that could solve this problem. And over the past 10 years, I've developed that into 2 patented processes. One that can handle organic contaminants like PFAS, dyes, and microfibers, and the other which handles the inorganic content like salts, metals, and minerals. And together, these can handle the most challenging industrial wastes, and we've shown this in pilot trials. Working with Adidas, PVH, and other Fashion for Good partners, we've shown in dye house operations in India and Taiwan that we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions and landfill waste. Since COVID, I've been working with partners in Texas, showing that we can take wastewater from oil and gas operations and make it compatible with membrane systems for freshwater production or direct lithium extraction. Our business is just unit economics. It costs less to operate a SeaChange system than it does to dispose sludge in Vietnam or inject water in the ground in the US. What's kept me in this for the past 10 years is a vision for sustainable water and energy for humanity. It's a crazy vision, but with outcomes like economically getting enough lithium out of wastewater to support the US energy transition, we can get there. With outcomes like gigaton reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, we can make the products that people want without any change in the supply chain. So if you'd like to bring the tech to your supply chain, come, let's talk. I'd love to work with you. And in closing, I'd like to leave you with just one thought. We can and must mitigate climate change. But to do that while creating value, we need something revolutionary. We need a SeaChange.
Thank you so much. The last thing that I want us to spend some time on here before we're gonna get you loose to talk to everyone is it's called a fireside chat. The first time I heard about a fireside chat, I was so disappointed when there were no fireside, actually. I mean, this will be one without a fire as well. I'm a huge fan of building and having fires. Anyway, this is the moment where I hope that you will get that, I haven't thought about that moment. This conversation, I hope, will keep us warm without a fire, because there is one topic that we seldom address in these forums, and that is the psychology of trying to drive change, and how our brains are wired, and what happens in our brains when we're striving for change. How can we use some of that power and harvest some of that learning into actually building the change that we need to see. And for that, I'm super happy to invite Professor Carolyn Mair up on stage. She is a cognitive psychologist, and she is a consultant for, you can come up, for applying psychology in fashion, and has also written a book called The Psychology of Fashion, pretty relevant. And I have Frank Zambrelli, who is a sustainability expert with extensive industry experience. I'll kind of leave it at that, because...
You're making me sound very old, but okay.
Okay.
I'm kidding.
In this short amount of time, he has been building extensive to guide us through this conversation. So, fireside chat away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christiane.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. As Christiane said, Frank Zambrelli. I'm the Vice Chair of Fashion and Exchange at Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and a Managing Director in this crazy sustainability space for Accenture. I have the privilege today to be in conversation with Professor Carolyn Mair, as you heard, a cognitive psychologist, a chartered fellow of the British Psychological Society, and a globally renowned fashion consultant in this space. Today we're going to talk a little bit about, well, our brains, sort of how they function in this space, particularly around how we're wired and how some of the messages, frankly some of the doom and gloom messages, don't seem to be resonating, don't seem to be working, and maybe how that is happening, why that's happening, and perhaps what we could do differently to transition, to reframe the conversation, the messaging, the way we work as individuals, the way we engage as organizations, and hopefully not only flip the narrative, but maybe flip the efficacy of some of that messaging along the way. Dr. Mair, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Frank. Thank you for the introduction.
So we talk a lot. You're in a room full of self-professed sustainability nerds, right? We talk all day about the science and the metrics and the measurement and the disclosure, the headwinds and tailwinds of greenwashing and regulations. We don't talk a whole lot about psychology, and yet what we're about to learn, and maybe some of you and your colleagues have learned, it's a critical opportunity, maybe even a new tool in the toolbox of how we get some things done. Share with us some of that connective tissue. Why is psychology important in this battle, in this conversation?
It's super important, Frank, because psychology is a scientific study of human behavior, and without understanding how humans behave, it's impossible to change that behavior. And I find it so exciting to hear some of the discussions this morning and speaking to some of the innovators. So much of what they do depends on getting the psychology right. So just in the panel we heard about open communication. Communication is a cognitive process. Communication takes part in the brain. It's not something that happens outside. Of course, it happens between people, but understanding how we can make communication actually successful is a thought process, a cognitive process. So psychology, in the context of fashion, in absolutely any area of the fashion industry, whether that is suppliers, whether that is brands and consumers, is absolutely super important.
So let's maybe jump right into it. We talk and hear a lot about the challenges, the sort of supply chain interruptions, the negative economic pressures. Miami is going to be underwater in a few years, right? We saw what happened in Dubai. We see this barrage of messaging that is a lot of doom and gloom, and maybe not allowing some of us who've been working in this space a long time to feel very hopeful. That communication obviously also affects us as individuals in terms of the decisions we make, the engagements. By nearly every standard, we are not moving fast enough.
Yeah.
Is this connected in terms of psychology to the doom and gloom of the messages? And what is actually happening? Is it impeding, slowing, and maybe even preventing change at scale?
Absolutely. So doom and gloom messages don't work in behavior change. what we need to do, and psychologists understand behaviour change because they understand behaviour. What we need to do when we're trying to change behaviour is demonstrate to the individuals or the brands that we're trying to make the behaviour better. We need to look at how we can express to them, how we can make them understand what's in it for them. So rather than talking to consumers about the planet, which we've been doing for decades, and not seeing change happen fast enough, is to talk about how they can engage with fashion, with enjoying looking the best they can look, and do it in a sustainable way. And telling people messages like, you know, the end of the world is coming, Miami's going to be underwater very quickly. What happens is it makes people feel impoverished in their ability to make a difference. It feels such a huge problem that just their small actions won't make a difference. But of course we know that put these actions together cumulatively, it's going to make a difference. And there was a movement about 5 years ago, and it's still going on with some sustainability activism, is to make ordinary consumers who buy on the high street, make them feel guilty about what they're buying. And from psychology, we know that when you make somebody feel guilty, you might encourage them to actually do more of that behavior. So we need to engage people, understand their capability, the opportunities to change, and their motivations to change. So not everybody has the capability, the physical and psychological capabilities to make that jump from their current behavior to the desired behavior. So we can help them. People who are actively working on sustainability agendas to help people develop the capabilities, give them opportunities to change. Bit by bit, it doesn't happen overnight. The same as we heard, change doesn't happen instantly. Change takes time. Innovation, this is an innovation for people. It's not a product innovation, but it's a behavioral innovation. It takes time. Bit by bit, what's in it for the person, how they can find the opportunities to change their behavior in a way that leads towards a desirable behavior.
Fascinating. I'm going to take a risk here. Dr. Mair studied computational neuroscience. She did her PhD in cognitive neuroscience. So we could go to a really challenging place right now that few of us would understand. So in terms that perhaps help us understand it, could we dive into the brain for a second? When we make associations with messaging, with a piece of clothing, what's actually happening at a technical level without requiring a scalpel and an X-ray? Yes.
So, I mean, a fantastic question. I just love talking about the brain because it's a 3-pound organ that sits in our skull that if we took it out of the skull, we would not be able to see what's going on in there. And it's just the most incredible piece of machinery that exists in the world, and we are still struggling, despite all the efforts to understand it, we're still struggling to understand it. So to answer your question, what happens when we engage with a fabric, with a piece of clothing, with an item of clothing, is we don't always, but we can create a narrative around that piece of clothing. We can create some emotional attachment, and emotion is so powerful, and it's so powerful because in the brain, the emotion center, the amygdala, sits very, very closely spatially with the hippocampus, and the hippocampus is where we lay down memories. Okay, so the hippocampus and the amygdala sit like this in the brain. When brain areas are spatially connected, it means the neural signals transfer much faster. So when we have an emotional connection with our clothes, it records the memory, it sits the memory in the hippocampus so that we can recall it much faster. So next time we reach for that item of clothing, if we have an emotional connection with it, it can relay that to us. So it could be like a talisman. So for example, I've worn this jumpsuit before and I've enjoyed the time that I've worn it. So I chose to wear it today because it makes me feel good. And And that comes through, those memories are triggered. And this is something that I believe is super powerful if we're trying to get consumers to care about what they wear and develop these narratives around their clothing. And also the touch, the feel of the fabric, and understanding. I mean, some of those, the 3-minute talks we've heard have been so inspirational and so emotionally deep that I believe those stories for consumers would be, so powerful.
So let's make the leap of these conversations thus far, bringing us to this space. How do we leverage that amygdala response, laying down to the hippocampus, connecting back to the first part of the conversations about doom and gloom not working? What might that look like if I'm an innovator, if I'm a consumer, if I'm an organization? How do we transition and reframe to maybe creating some of that positive narrative? What might it look like differently today?
Okay, so one of the things that helps in behavior change is telling people what they can do rather than telling people what they cannot do. So really turning the narrative around to positive. So when we get messaging that needs to be interpreted by the brain in order to make the connections with people's experiences and with their expectations. So a point I'd like to make here is that we are all cognitively diverse. We all will take away, every single person in this room will take away a different memory of not only Frank and my conversation here, but all the other talks that are taking place and the interactions you have. And that's because you bring to the situation today your different experiences from day one and the expectations that are generated as a result of your past experiences. So we need to engage with consumers rather than thinking consumers do this or Gen Z does this and Gen X does that, but understanding lifestyle, location, cultural perspectives. Consumers are not all the same, and they're certainly not all the same in generational terms. Engage with them on a positive level, help them understand what they can do, engage with the narratives, and we know that narratives are so powerful, and engage and help people understand, put opportunities in the way. So if people have stores, online stores or real brick and mortar stores, put items together that help people buy an outfit rather than buying several tops that when they take them home, they don't go with anything that's in their wardrobe. Help people understand that they can use the clothes for success, to understand that a piece of clothing can really trigger positive emotions, can trigger confidence, positivity, or any other characteristic you want to portray. And fashion enables you to do that, but it needs to come from inside. It needs to be generated by making these connections in the brain. So beyond the amygdala and the hippocampus to the reasoning areas of the brain, which sits here in the front.
Fantastic. So I'm going to oversimplify it, but accentuating the positive works.
Yes.
This idea that we can connect.
Yes.
That was my non-PhD education. So fantastic. I think I'd love to hear what Robin has to say about this. Robin, could we ask you to take the full context of our conversation today and synthesize it in a recap so we can all better understand what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me to synthesize this captivating discussion. Today's conversation beautifully highlighted the crucial role of psychology in driving sustainable behavior within the fashion industry. Dr. Carolyn Mair emphasized the importance of understanding human behavior to effectively instigate change. The discussion delved into how doom and gloom narratives often fail because they overwhelm individuals, making them feel powerless rather than empowered. Instead, the focus should be on creating positive narratives that connect emotionally. These narratives should be tailored to individual experiences and expectations, recognizing the cognitive diversity among consumers. This approach leverages the brain's natural mechanisms, like the connection between the emotional center, the amygdala, and the memory center, the hippocampus. to create positive associations with sustainable practices. The takeaway is clear. By reframing the message from what we shouldn't do to what we can do positively, we engage people more effectively. This not only helps in laying down lasting memories, but also empowers individuals to make sustainable choices that resonate personally and emotionally. This positive engagement can be a powerful catalyst for change, transforming how consumers interact with fashion and driving the industry towards more sustainable practices.
Wow. Would Robin have gotten an A in your class?
Robin would get an A star. Wow.
Fantastic.
Blown away.
Dr. Mair, a really enlightening conversation. Thank
you
you for your time and expertise.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you so much. And here I was thinking that I would try and wrap and summarize this, but I don't need to do that. Thank you, Robin. One more teaser before I'm gonna let you all go out and explore the innovations on your own, or two more actually. So 2 more of those 3-minute energizing teasers before we wrap it up. First one up, here you go.
Everyone, my name is Shelly and I am the founder of SXD. We create zero-waste designs like what I'm wearing right now and design patterns scaled through proprietary AI. So we're here from all around the world, but the one thing that we all have in common is that hopefully we're all wearing clothes. But our second skin is also one of the biggest polluters on our planet. My own hometown in China is now a textile dumpster, and 92 million tons of fabric is wasted every year. So I founded SXD to create and scale beautiful zero-waste designs and to turn our products into quality zero-waste alternatives that save up to 46% on fabric, which, by the way, is 10 times more savings than any other technology today, which also translates to cost savings. And we drive about 80% lower carbon emissions. And we can use the savings to pay workers 2 to 4 times better. So this is how SXD works. We take traditional clothing, which has about 10 to 30% waste by design in the pattern, and we turn that completely into a zero-waste one that actually not only has no fabric waste, but uses a lot less material, which drives cost savings as well as benefiting our planet. And not only that, we have an AI platform that then scales zero-waste designs across sizes, across similar styles, across materials. And this is super exciting because zero-waste design has existed for quite some time, kimono, the sari, but the problem is that it has been impossible to scale. Because anytime when something small changes, some designer has to manually redesign everything to keep it zero-waste. But with our AI platform, we can do that redesign in seconds instead of weeks or months. And today we work with about 15 incredible brands, and we also work with suppliers around the world. And whenever we can, we transfer the savings to work with climate refugees in Bangladesh who have lost their homes due to sea level rising. We started SXD with just a handful of climate refugees, and I'm so proud to say that today we work with over 60. And when I was just in Bangladesh recently, we met Jaleka, who's one of our OG climate refugees, who since working with us has been promoted to be a manager, bought her own land, her own home, and has completely elevated her way of life. So with SXD, what we think about is how we can combine the best of design and AI to really drive impact across businesses, our planet, and our people. And in fact, if all of our industry in fashion can adopt our work, we can actually drive about 5 gigatons of CO2 emission reduction in the next 3 years. So I am here asking for your support and help so we can do this together and make our industry the leader in solving for climate change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next one up.
Everyone hear me okay? Okay, great.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarika Bajaj and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Refibered. I will start with a similar stat that Shelly also used, which I think everyone in this room hopefully does know. 92 million tons of textile waste are generated each year. Less than 1% is actually recycled into new clothing. Now, what's been really fantastic over the last decade is textile circularity has been a real rallying cry for the industry, and despite some recent setbacks, we're at the point of pretty transformative change. You know, first recyclers are really scaling up to large-scale systems in the next 2 to 3 years, which, if you think about that, that's frankly incredible. However, there is a major gap that still remains in our path to circularity, and that's really in sorting infrastructure. So recyclers, anyone you can imagine, requires well-sorted feedstock as the input to their process. It's because they're worried about contamination and they're worried about yield. They need good quality materials to get good quality materials out of their process. Now, the problem is textile waste is a notorious mix of fibers, blends, coatings, contaminants that then makes this detection element very difficult, which makes sorting very difficult, which is also why incumbents today have only been able to tell the material percentage within 10%, 20%, and for recyclers need this within 2%. And so that was really the thesis that we, Refibered, set out to solve 4 years ago. Can we bridge that gap and especially using AI, can we actually get there? And thankfully, especially as the last year, we can. And so using all of the new advancements that we've seen through ChatGPT, through Robin, really, we have been able to finally make a technology that can do that detection within 1 to 2% in under a millisecond of speed. And so this is the solution to the gap in circularity today. The next goal is to really use it and scale it. And so through December, we were able to run 4 pilots with different sorters, recyclers, brand partners to validate that, yes, this accuracy works on their own feedstock. We're now working on actually deploying our first couple of systems, which is terrifying and exciting. And really what we'll also be doing later this year is more investment to keep scaling. How can we get from pilots to 3 deployments to 20? You know, how can we really bring this to the massive scale? And for that, funding is great. Now, I'll leave kind of with a final thought. We have really seen a lot of progress by working together in this industry. What we really need is solutions and bringing in every part of the supply chain, as been discussed before, to solve this and work together. And that's a lot of people in this room. So I invite you to come, work together, and let's actually achieve this. That's crazy. Amazing. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you to all of you here who've been diligently listening for the past 90 minutes, to all the innovators that have been up here energizing us, to all the insightful conversations. I at least had some new learnings, a fair share of moments. I hope you share that. And it's been inspirational to have Robin here. I am pretty amazed about how that went, and also a little relieved. Thank you so much to our partner Accenture, who helped us put that together and teach Robin with a lot of material beforehand. I thought that was a fun way of applying it, and as you heard from the last innovators as well, there is plenty of opportunities to use that type of development and tech and innovation also in the fashion industry. So my main send-off is keep in touch, create some connections, talk to everyone, have some snacks, a coffee, hang around. That's the most important part of the thing we can do here. And thank you so much for coming.